just going to see. We are recording. Great. Okay, here we go. Hello, I'm Liliane Grace, author of a number of books for the conscious family, like The Mastery Club, and my newest book, Power of the Light, which is about a boy whose father has cancer and what they do about it. Now, in the process of researching this book, I did a number of very interesting interviews with people, inspiring individuals who were given a cancer diagnosis and overcame, transformed their health. So I have one of those wonderful people with me here today, and that is Yvonne Chamberlain. Hello, Yvonne. Welcome.
Hello, Liliane. A privilege to be here with you today.
Thank you. So would you please share, what was your initial diagnosis of cancer? When did that occur? Give us your quick background on that.
Sure. Well, Liliane, I actually had to go and look it up because it was actually in 1979, just before Christmas. And I just noticed this funny little black mole thing on my leg. And I thought, oh, that looks a bit funny. So I thought, and I don't normally go to the doctor, but something impressed me that I needed to go to the doctor. So I did, and this local doctor, he looked at it and the color drained out of his face. And he said, I'll just make an appointment for you to see the skin specialist. And I'm thinking, you're a doctor, you've got eyes, why do I need somebody else? So anyway, not being accustomed to going to doctors, it's like, oh, okay. So that was on a Wednesday. Thursday morning at 9 a.m., I was at the skin specialist. And Liliane, I am not a needle person. When I give blood, I look the other way. It's like, and they brought out a needle, and I swear it was a meter long. I mean, it wasn't really, but it was to me. And I looked at him with that needle, and I said, what are you going to do with that? And he said, I'm going to give you an injection so you don't feel it when I do the biopsy. I said, what's a biopsy? And he's looking at me like, okay. And I had no idea. He said, we're just going to cut out this little, what looks like a mole, and send it away and see what it is. And I said, why can't you just look at it and see what it is? He goes, because I can't look under the skin. So I said, no. My husband wouldn't like it if all of me didn't come home from here. I need to go and ask him. And this doctor, this skin specialist, is going, what on earth have I got in front of me? For me, I just had to get out there. Any excuse was as good as another. So I got home, and what I did was I phoned my naturopath. And he said, no, Yvonne, go back, have it diagnosed, see what it is, and then you'll be able to make a decision as to what you want to do about it. So I phoned the guy back and said, my husband said it was okay, the naturopath. And so I went back in at 5 p.m. and he brought out the needle, stuck it in, and it was just so painful. I think he was so angry at me for having to make a second appointment, and I fainted. And it took them 45 minutes to recover me from the faint. And anyway, he did the biopsy. So then the next morning at about 7:30, he phoned to say, don't eat or drink anything, come in immediately, we need to do immediate surgery. And I said, what do you mean immediate surgery? He said, well, it's come back as black melanoma, and we need to amputate your leg. And I said, what? Excuse me? And he said, so do not eat or drink anything, come in immediately so that we can put you straight into theater. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm not having my leg amputated. And I hung up on him. So half an hour later, he rings back and he said, Mrs. Chamberlain, you need to understand this is serious. If you don't have this surgery done, then the challenge is going to be that you're going to die in 6 weeks. And I said, pardon me? And he said, there's no other way around it. He said, the biopsy would have allowed the melanoma cells to go into your bloodstream, and we need to do surgery. And I said, no, you're not going to cut my leg off. And I hung up again. And then he rang me 4 times and to say, look, you can get a prosthesis. It's okay. If you can't afford it, we'll work out a payment plan. And I said, no, you're not cutting my leg off. And so now what I'm trying to do is to get a hold of my naturopath. Well, I couldn't get a hold of him. So I had to wait. And finally, when I did get a hold of him, he said, well, let's ring Mexico, because he had heard about a cancer clinic there. And he said, maybe they could offer you some suggestions. Oh, okay. So it was the wrong timing because of Mexico's on the other side of the world. And so when I did get through to the clinic, the doctor there said, come yesterday. And I'm going, yesterday is over. What do you mean? And she said, come now. And
Can
I
I
said,
pause you for one
yes,
moment? I just want to ask you. So at this point, you've seen a black mole on your leg that everyone is reacting to, but did you have any sensation of pain or discomfort or illness?
nothing,
Nothing. Okay.
nothing at all. It was just simply a black spot on my leg. It
How
was,
big? Should kind of give us a bit of a.
it would be about the size of the pupil in your eye. You know, it was not big. It was just
Wow.
maybe the size of a pea. That over the past month, I noticed it got a little bit bigger, and it sort of looked like it had pinheads in it, right? So it had sort of raised itself, but it didn't hurt, it didn't itch, it was nothing. It was just a black spot, nothing.
Mm.
So yeah, and just goes to show that if you do notice anything, go and get it checked out, because you don't know. And had I not sort of looked at that and thought, oh, that looks funny, and I felt impressed to go to the doctor. Now, how long would I still be here had I not? I think you have to follow those promptings.
Mm.
Mm,
Mm.
mm.
All right. So back to Mexico. So you've spoken with this clinic in Mexico.
Yes.
They've said, get over here immediately.
Get over here. So I was on the plane. I had to get a passport, a visa, all the rest. And fortunately, I knew a friend who was a senator, so I was able to get a medical visa. And so I was there within a couple of days. And they just took one look at it, and the doctor said, no problems. We've got it early. We'll be able to do something with it. And so they sort of got a piece of cotton and rolled it out, sort of, and made like a little ring. And then they put this, it looked like mustard is the color, if I give you a description. And inside the little ring that they put. And she said to me, now, this is going to eat away the mole, and it's going to eat the roots, and it's going to feel like ants crawling on you. Now, when the feeling of ants is gone, that means there's no more roots left to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to go back every day for 10 days for them to put a fresh dressing on. And then she said, okay, it's looking good. And there was no more itching. And she said, so we need to see you again in 2 months. And I went, I live in Australia. I'm just not coming back on a plane again. It's like, it's too far, it's too expensive. So she said, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll look at it, come back in a couple of weeks. So fortunately, my brother lived in the States, so I went and stayed with him for a couple of weeks, and, we dressed it there. And it just, the ointment had made like an ice cream scoop hole in my leg where it had eaten it away. And now you could see the flesh starting to grow back up again. And by the time I went back to the clinic, it was almost all gone, and that skin had dried, and it looked kind of like a walnut, like a dried walnut in a hole. And she said, perfect. She said, that'll, drop out. And she said, and then you'll be right. So it's like, okay. And they put me on a tonic that I needed to take a couple of teaspoonfuls 4 times a day. And she said to me, no sugar, not 1 grain, because cancer feeds on sugar. And all of the things that we're doing to kill the cancer cells will be non-effective if you feed them. So I went, oh, okay. So that meant don't buy anything from the shop that's already made. Make everything yourself. So I learned how to make my own bread. I learned how to do everything myself. It was like, okay. And then tomatoes stopped the tonic from working, so no tomatoes. And the only other thing that she said not to eat was no pork. She said, because pork can't digest in your system, and we don't want your system having to work to try to get rid of, anything that it can't utilize. And so meanwhile, I'd gone on a research of what else is available, and I came across the Gerson Clinic, and the Gerson Clinic treated cancer using coffee enemas. And I thought, wow, if I've got 6 weeks to live, I've already lived 3 weeks of the 6. And so it made sense to me to do the coffee enemas. So, I thought, okay, I can do those. And I was on crutches the whole time to keep my leg off the ground. And so now I'm coming home. And Liliane, the hardest thing was when I came home, the people that I knew thought that I was a blooming idiot for not having my leg amputated. What are you doing? You're a mother with 3 small children. You're crazy. They can, give you a prosthesis. What are you doing? And so my dear husband, he didn't allow anybody to come and see me who didn't support what I was doing, because I didn't need their negative feedback. I needed all of the faith and all the positivity that I could get. Mm. And what I came to understand in all of this, Liliane, was the power of your words. And I learned to never say my cancer, because if you say my cancer, you own it, and anything that you own, you look after it. And so it was always this cancer, never my cancer. Mm. And the other thing in that process, when you're reading and searching, why me? I came to understand that I had a lot of bitterness and a lot of resentment and a lot of negativity in me that had allowed this scenario in my body. And Ian and I actually hadn't been, getting along really well. I felt like my needs weren't being met. And I guess it was just, I was feeling like a victim and poor me. And so the brain said, okay, poor me, what it is that you want. And I had said to my husband on the Wednesday that I went to the doctor, I've had enough of all of this, I'm out of here, I'm leaving. And he looked at me totally stunned, like, what? Because men don't see the same view as women. And so now through all of this and going overseas, to the clinic and then coming home, I now have time to really evaluate. And it really hit me that for me to die of this black melanoma in 6 weeks was a dignified way of leaving, so no one would know that I was leaving my husband and we weren't getting along. It's like, oh my goodness. And so here's my dear husband. He's making the coffee for me. He's making carrot juice for me. He's doing everything for me. And I realized that all of this that was happening to me was the result of my own thinking and my own negativity, my own bitterness, my own resentment. And that's when I came to understand that we are spirit, soul, and body. And I could be doing all of this stuff to heal the body, but if I didn't get healed spiritually and in my soul level, it would take me out. And it's why some doctors, they don't ever want to do surgery on a patient who doesn't think that the surgery is, they're going to come out okay, because the belief that they have will help them or hinder them. Mm-hmm. And you present that so beautifully in your book. It's the way you think, it's what you're thinking. And that was such a new thing for me, what you're thinking, but I saw it so real in my life. And so I had to ask God to help me to forgive, to let go of the resentment and the bitterness and the animosity and any negative word you want to call it. I think it was there. And so I had to come and just say, God, I bring myself to you. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me for being so self-centered. Please forgive me for the attitudes that I had towards situations, people, etc., that I was holding as a grudge. And when I was able to do that, it was like I was just a different person. I was at peace, and the affirmations, that I was using every day, now I could believe them. Where up until then, it was just what somebody had told me to say. It wasn't coming from my heart, it was coming from head. But it was when I was able to get this from my head to my heart that I needed to change to release the cancer. I needed to change. And I had to really get a purpose for living. And I had a verse from the Bible that is still on my desk today, and it said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" And it was like, please God, help me to believe. Yes, I believe. Please help me to believe. It was like, because the words that the doctor had said were just there. And then the 6 weeks passed, then it was 8 weeks, then it was 10. And I really, during that time, was able to find a real purpose for my life. Why did I want to go through this treatment that was going to take 2 years? How would I get the discipline to have not 1 grain of sugar for 2 years? Because I love sugar. You know, where would I get the discipline from? So Ian and I went and we studied naturopathy so that I would understand how the body worked, so that I would have the discipline to stick with it and do what I needed to do. And we didn't study naturopathy for us to be naturopaths, but so that I could have the discipline. And I knew that when I was healed and well, people would want to know, so what did you do and how did it work? And I knew that I needed to have a better answer than just, I went to a clinic. I needed to understand what had happened in me, not just to me. And my purpose then was, I am a life enricher. And so for the last 40 years, Liliane, that's who I am. I am a life enricher. I talk to cancer patients. I talk to people with all sorts of illnesses. I help them to work out healthier ways to eat. I help them to work out healthier ways to think, their mindset, for them to understand what their mindset does to them in paralyzing their ability to be able to do what they would love to do, but they're scared to do. The programming of people that have said negative words over you, the programming of just situations. And Liliane, I am so grateful for that experience. And I don't believe that anything happens to you for nothing. God takes everything that happens and then he can use it for his purpose. And so for the last 40 years, I've been a life mentor. I have a leadership development program that I run to help people to develop their leadership skills, to pay it forward. And it's just amazing the people that I've met, that I've been able to support and encourage and let them understand that if they choose to have the medical treatment, they're not wrong. Because if that's where their faith is, according to your faith, be it unto you. And if your faith is in the natural, then the natural will work. It's the placebo, it's the faith. It's, why does the placebo work? Because you believe it will. And
so are you actually working as a naturopath or more on the leadership side and on the mindset side?
Well, when I'm mentoring a person, we have a wheel that's got 8 spokes on it. And health is one of those spokes.
Yep.
Finance is one of those spokes, mental, exercise, relationships. And so when I'm doing my mentoring, it's always on the 8 spokes.
Yep.
Because you can do everything, as I learned, for the body, but if the heart isn't where it needs to be, then the body will still follow the route of, you're eating the wrong foods, you're not nourishing the body. And when you're not looking after the body at cellular level, then the body has no reserves. And if you have no bank reserves, then, when you're called upon to make a withdrawal, you've got nothing there. And so I learned through the course of naturopathy, nutritional eating, and why that was so important. and I learned feeding the mind, why that was so important, right? Well, even now, Liliane, like in this pandemic, some people are like, oh, I'm shackled, and they're angry. And it's like, no, I'm not shackled, right? Because shackled is in your mind, it's how you're thinking, it's what you say to yourself. And I just look at it and I am so blessed, because people that I knew 10 years ago, I've got time to ring them up and say, how are you going? Because I just get so busy that the names get lost. And so I've been going through old files and contacting people that I haven't seen or heard for 10 years and finding out where they are on the planet. And then many, many times I can leave a deposit in their life. And oh, Liliane, there's nothing quite like it. Nothing quite like it. You would know that.
Yeah. Let me take you back, though, earlier to what you were saying about your husband, about Ian. So isn't it fascinating that you were doing all this for your body and your husband was supporting you so exquisitely, and you still had this long-term grudge? And it was only when you became really conscious of the grudge in the context of a death sentence, that you took it seriously and really did that introspecting and realized that I might change all the physical stuff, but if I haven't changed in my heart,
it's all wasted. It's all wasted.
Yeah.
And Liliane, that's why some people can go to the clinic and they do all the stuff the clinic says and they die.
Yep.
Because in their heart is not right.
Yeah.
And their mindset is not right. They're still holding on to it's unfair. And it's like, hey, grow up. Life isn't fair.
Yeah.
Get over it, right? Treat other people the way you'd like to be treated yourself, instead of believing that the world should operate around you. And it was just such a celebration for us, because January, this last year, we celebrated 50 years wedding anniversary.
Wow, lovely. Congratulations.
Yeah. And I just think, man, here I was ready to walk out on somebody who has been so faithful to me and loved me unconditionally. And he has been such a lesson to me of what it means to love and not hold grudges and to care. And for me, when you're living out of your head, then that's when all of this stuff happens. And when you can start living out of your heart, your whole life is totally, 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 totally different.
Yeah.
And that healing that had to happen when I had to go to him and say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. And he looked at me and he said, there's nothing to forgive. And I'm going, oh yes, there is. I have been so selfish. I've been living out of my head. I've been living out of the mindset, and it was a negative mindset. And so through all of that, I became a brand new person. And I just, we have referred many, many people to the clinic. Some have died and some are still alive. And the ones that are alive are the ones who have looked at spirit, soul, and body. Yeah. So, that's the mentoring that I do now. It's like
very holistic.
We can do all of the, you can starve yourself, right? To get rid of all the toxins that you've eaten with all the junk food that you've eaten and whatever, and you're still going to die because you're starving yourself with the wrong motive.
Yeah. I would like to say thank you to you for the conversation that we had way back when I was first writing Power of the Light, and all that you shared, because it was a lot of this message was what you shared with me back then. And because you gave me the confirmation of what I needed in order to write the book, which was how powerful that mental emotional side is. So in this book, you can barely see here, but there is the image of the boy's father who has cancer,
right?
And he's in the dark here, and he's, as you were in terms of your relationship with your husband and your perception, he's in the dark. The father is struggling with resentment of his own father,
Yeah.
and guilt about
Yeah.
how he's managing the
Yeah.
household, income and things like that. And all of those, though, the shame and the guilt and the anger have been eating away at him until he's
Yeah.
manifested this
And that's what
cancer.
cancer is.
Mm,
Cancer is eating away. And
yeah.
I must also share with you, and I just thought it was so beautiful, The Power of the Light, your book, because somebody said to me, but Yvonne, how did you know the stuff that was in there? And this is what I did. I would go to bed at night and I would imagine this light coming into my head, into my brain, and all of your brain has got all the little folds in it. And I would see it opening up and the light shining in. And then I'd see something that I needed to say sorry for or fix. And then it would be, and then the light would shine, and then the light would shine. And it was like every little fold in the brain, right? Then the light would shine into that fold. And it was just all in my mind is how I saw that. And then as something would be revealed to me in the little crevice of way back when I was a kid, right? And then it would be, oh God, I bring this to you. And sometimes I would need to, like I needed to write a letter to my dad and ask my dad to forgive me because he was such a strict disciplinarian. And not to say, you were wrong in disciplining me, but to say my reaction to your discipline was wrong. Please forgive me. And that was one of the little folds when the light shone on it, right? Mm-hmm. To just really see things that I had never, ever understood before. And it was the power of the light that was just, that I was able to identify what needed to be released. Because until you know, you can't do anything about it. And it's the power of the light.
Yes, it is.
That did that.
Yes.
And then I would see the light coming from my head, and I would see it cleansing my brain, and it would just cleanse anything that I'd seen and any words of negativity that I heard over my life that was going to program me to negativity. And then I'd see it coming down the light over my mouth and exposing the negative words that I had said about things and people. And then I would just see the light coming down over every organ of my body, just identifying any toxins that were there, anything that needed to be released, because that's what the coffee enemas do, is go into the tissues and clean out the toxins. And I would see the white light just all the way through. And by the time I got to my big toenail, I'd be, and Liliane, in 41 years, I have not had to take a painkiller.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
I don't get sick. I don't get sick.
Wow.
And I have not taken a painkiller in 41 years.
You so thoroughly bathed yourself in light. And that's beautiful because, yes, I've deliberately brought in this idea of light, of enlightenment, in the sense of the transformational power of light. And also there's a fantasy element to the novel where the boy goes into a dream world and learns some of these things. And okay, it's a bit of a simplistic sort of model perhaps, but that's the essence of what you were doing, is using the power of imagination, of visualization, whatever.
Yes.
To heal.
And when I was having the coffee enemas and I would sit on the loo, I would just see all of the negative things leaving. I mean, that's pretty, on an interview and the world will hear. but that's the way it was. Yeah. And it's like, and I just cannot emphasize enough that it has to be holistic. Healing is holistic. No matter what your disease is. It doesn't matter whether it's lupus or Lyme's or heart disease or sugar diabetes or whatever, right? And then it's living in the peace that comes when you are living holistic. Yeah, and I can't recommend it enough. It's just like, get whole.
Get whole, yeah, absolutely. Yvonne, hold up your book so that people can see the book that you wrote that I read way back there.
Yeah.
So Why Me? Kicking Cancer and Other Life-Changing Stuff by Yvonne Chamberlain. And would you like to give your website?
Well, my website, because of COVID, isn't functioning. So if people just would like a copy of the book, look, I'm more than happy to pay the postage because I just want people to be able to, read the whole story. So just send me an email, Yvonne, YVONNE at myfreedom, one word, .net.au. So send me an email, and what I'll do is just send you an invoice, and then you can pay it or send me a credit card, whatever, $20, and I'll pay the postage, because I just want people to be whole. And I have just had so many people show so much gratitude for the openness in the book. And I must admit that when I wrote it, because I didn't want anybody to know that Ian and I were, and I didn't want anybody to know the ugliness and the, because you want people to think, oh, isn't she a lovely lady?
Hasn't she got it together?
And so it was a really big step for me to be willing to be so transparent in the book, and to just really understand that if I wasn't transparent and tell people the whole story, then the whole event for me would simply just be an event, and it wouldn't be a blessing, it wouldn't be a help to anyone. So I had to be transparent. And in that transparency, I guess we discovered that everybody's got dark corners. Everybody.
Yvonne, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story. When I read your book, I was very touched by your story and inspired, and it was wonderful substance for me in writing my book. So I really appreciate it. I encourage you to get a copy of Yvonne's book and to share this video with anyone you know who might be struggling with some sort of health issue. And I'd like to do my own little book plug again. So Power of the Light.
It's wonderful.
Thank you, Yvonne. I'm donating 20% from the profit of each book sale to Farmers Footprint, which is an organisation that is aimed at regenerating the soil and agriculture, because a lot of the illnesses that we experience today can be traced back to chemicals and pesticides and so forth in our diet. So
absolutely,
that's about.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liliane, how fabulous that is. How
Thank
fabulous.
you.
And look, it is so true. It's the toxins in the soil. You think you're eating good food, but you're eating toxins. And so to have farmers that are concerned and doing something.
Yes.
Yeah. And they do
great.
help.
Is a great thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So well done. Well done.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your time. And the last thing I really want to say actually is about illness, and it relates to, we're in this COVID pandemic, or quote scamdemic, or whatever you want to call it.
Whatever. Yeah.
And really and truly, things like cancer and heart disease are far greater pandemics than this flu virus is. So I really do encourage you to take care of your health, take responsibility for your health, build your immune system, look after yourself, because you really will not be subject to this this virus if you are looking after yourself. That's all it is.
Absolutely. It's build your immunity, spirit, soul, and body, and get a purpose.
Yes.
Get a purpose that's bigger than you, like you, to make a difference for the farmers. Get a purpose that you can be excited about, that you can commit to. And when you do that, every day, I never wake up like, oh God, another day. I wake up and we haven't used an alarm clock for 40 years because we just wake up excited that we've got another day to make a difference.
That's wonderful.
It's like, life is fabulous. So get a purpose, and then you don't need an alarm clock.
And there are thousands of people taking their lives and deeply in depression now because their lives have been altered a bit through this lockdown. And while I don't agree with the lockdown in terms of what the government agendas are behind it, it's a great opportunity. It's a nourishing opportunity for many people to change patterns and to find new ways of being and doing. And so, yes, if you are at all stressed and challenged, you've got Yvonne as a potential mentor, reach out to me. I've got a new mastery club online running now. And so we would love to support you with managing your way, or much more than managing, but flourishing.
Flourishing.
So, once again, thank you, Yvonne.
It's a pleasure. Really total pleasure. And, just hope that people are going to be blessed.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.